Aeril, my sword you shall be, 10 to the 1 taken. My shield you shall be, ward of my flesh and of my kin. My tunic, my cloak, my belt, you shall be mine armor in which I am enrobed. Legend your names shall become, and that of your swords, my new judgment, which on this day I anoint with names unmarred by betrayal to the Empire. Holy blades they shall be, whose use, if the divine is willing, shall prevent any such calamity from ever happening again. From Arcades the Builder's Writ of the Holy Blades. Aeril awoke with a shriek. He had been dreaming again, of days past and shadows unremembered. His skin burned, and beneath it whispered the chill of fever. Clenching his left hand, the flames burned there especially. He sat up in bed, blinking the sleep from his eyes. And yet, as he did, one betrayed him, refusing to open. In its place extended a chasm of darkness, wrapping around the side of his head into oblivion. Faster, harder, Aeril tried to blink, until an ailing mind awoke to an afflicted body. Aeril moved his mouth only to be choked by memory. The forest, the pigeons, the fall was once more. Haltingly, the haler hand rose, fearing what its fingers would find. Where his right orb should have been, bulging bandages were instead. Pain mounted in the void beyond Aeril's vision as he pressed down against the mound until the line scratched against the back of his eye. With a gasp, Aeril pulled his fingers away, moving them so he could see. They were clean. No! Aeril again pressed the wad of cloth where his right eye should have been until the pain returned. No! Possessed by desperation, Aeril began frantically snapping his head from side to side, hoping against hope that somehow half of the world would reattach itself, his lost sight be found. Instead, it was a sealed scroll, awash in the light of dawn atop his desk. On weak, feverish legs, Aeril rose and stumbled over to the table. With hands matching his feet, Aeril picked up the scroll, clumsily broke the seal, and read. The words betrayed him, though, until Aeril cocked his head to the side so his left eye might see. I'd best get used to this. The thought brought tears to Aeril's left eye. Shuddering, he began to read the neat, rounded letters. My little brother, when you read this, if it is you who reads this, I will be away from Castle Ravencroft, and with the heaviest heart I tell you that I do not know when I might return. Only the gods know whose arrow took your eye, but guilt would be as equally mine if I knew for certain. Forgive me. Do not cry. Please, do not cry. Little brother who bloody Vitria has so quickly returned and taken away. Forgive me. The future opens up before us, and if, blinded by tears, Aeril crushed the parchment in a hand still bearing the scrapes of the forest floor, he held it close, sobbing silently, until he heard someone near his chamber door. Looking over his shoulder, he turned, but beside tear and anguish there was nothing. The noise faded and Aeril was alone again, shivering. So, it's true. The words were a mucusy whisper. Aeril's fingers betrayed him as the tears began once more. The future, once so certain, had been drowned beneath a sea of darkness. He had lost too much. The scroll hit the floor. The rooks would not accept him, nor would Erdonia the ministrations of a maimed, world-weary boy of 20. He could hear their laughter even now. And egg in hand, Fortuna, they denied you. Everyone but Lucian denied you. Aeril wiped the tears from his left eye and clumsily picked the parchment up from the floor. He uncrumpled the letters and inhaled sharply, only to squeeze his left eye shut and shake his head in denial. I can't do it, he told himself. I can't. Aeril slammed his fist against the table, then reached for his amulet. It wasn't there. If Aeril was still half asleep, he had now fully woken. He had lost it in the forest. Surely when he fell, right? But they had been riding a while. It could be anywhere. Aeril's fingers raked against the spot where it should have been, lamenting that which had been obscured from his sight. No, Aeril thought as the tears began anew. Not lost. Not obscured. Stolen by Edmund. It was him, It had to be. He was the one who had led them into Erin's wood. He was the one to begin the hunt, to shoot more, to shoot better than anyone else. Edmund was the one who had shot him, who had stolen everything Aeril held dear. Unless... Aeril shook the thought from his head. He would not consider it. But egg in hand, why would he do that? Aeril wondered. He had not unslung his bow. Surely he would have known better. And if he meant to, why? It had to be a mistake. How else? And if not egg in hand, it had to be Edmund. Crass, insolent Edmund. Aeril felt something awaken in his gut, a flame he had scarcely felt there before. I'll kill him. Although whispered, the words were clear. I'll kill him. That would be justice, wouldn't it? That everyone got what they deserved. That Aeril would have everything stolen restored and Edmund would suffer the consequences. Nowhere would be safe for him. Not Fair Calais, not Erdonia, nowhere. He would pursue him to the stone threshold of the great northern waste, the dunes of Volas, and beyond. He would hunt him even into the dark forest and bogs of Harat, the snow-crusted wilds of Hiamat, and even unto the fabled Valley of the Sun, or the city Karushamal at the world's edge and its mountain which had no name. But first he had to reclaim his necklace. First he had to reclaim his eye. Aeril grabbed the flint and steel atop his desk. If the letter was not for his left eye, then it was for no one's. Let it go where all burned things go. Aeril thought as determination made hard what fever and upset had softened. Silent tears fell from his left eye as he watched the parchment contort and wither in the flames, promising that this would be the last tear he would shed for a very long time. Exhausted, Aeril crawled back to bed and closed his left eye, feeling the rage inside him burn as he waited for strength to return and his hunt to begin. In the dream he had two eyes again. He was running through a silent, snowy city, its streets and edifices a slate-gray stone forged without mortar. He had been led there by knowing footprints, even if this time he knew not what they led him to. Crossing a dry canal, he looked up and beheld a great mountain cliff, its cascading precipice oil-smooth and storm-dark. Before it rose two bony spires of the same bleak stone, pockmarked by hundreds and hundreds of hollows freezing in the open air. At the sight of them, he thought back to the legends of his homeland, of the old man of the mountain, that great winged beast whose breath caused stones to crack and trees to wither. The tracks led east, towards the cliff and the dry basin at its nadir. He knew who had left them, her scent of secret mystique. He could make her out now, at the foot of a gigantic stair, one which tapered into a narrow path winding its way up the mountain's less arduous side. Up and up and up he chased her, until the man could see beneath him the entire city of slate-gray stone, swaddled in snow and silenter than the sea. Between the dry canals and gray walls the occasional bit of orange or yellow fought against the dark, but the flames were huddled close, leaving most of the city defenseless against a night without stars. Through a great gray gate he went, now chasing her footsteps into a maze of stone hallways, the only warmth in a cold world. At some point he reached out to grab her, but she slipped away, his left hand dulled by leather and marred by an ancient wound. They were in the central corridor now, a long passageway emptying out over the city, a narrow cleft for water, now dry, at its center. She darts into a nearby room. Inside it is dark, silent, until she creeps out of the shadows, kissing him passionately as her arms wrap around him, pulling him towards the stone. He kisses her back, feeling the warmth of her lips, her eyes, a gem-like sheen in the dark, drive all else away. Aeril awoke silently. His fever had broken. At first he tried blinking the sleep from his eyes until he remembered. A hand against the empty place in his chest. He extended the other towards the ceiling. It was him. Aeril examined his fingers in the afternoon sun. I was him, in the dream. At once Aeril rose. He knew what he had to do, but not had he even fully risen when the pain began anew, accompanied by stars dancing in front of his left eye. The place where his right eye should have been hurt like a hollow tooth, a broken arm, a burned hand, and he was hungry, ravenously. Throwing on a plain tunic, Aeril crept down the stairs of a strangely silent castle. Many would make a fuss at his awakening, and for the time being he'd rather go unnoticed. The great hall was empty but for a household guard, standing over 2 tables, high and low, yet to be set for the night's meal. It was a man Aeril did not recognize. He was short, and older than Aeril by less than half. At their sight, Aeril realized how few of the household guard he had truly seen since his return. Half of them must be with father. When the guard sneezed, a loud tolling sound like a herald shouting the day's news, Aeril snuck past and down the stairs towards the kitchen. He paused on the edge of the doorway, herbs and onions on the air. His stomach rumbled. "Who's there?" Amnia looked up from her work. "Aeril, by the hills and tells, you're—" Aeril put a finger to his lips. "Here I am." His voice was a hoarse whisper. "Amnia, do you have anything to eat? I'm starving." The old woman put down her knife. "What would you have of me?" "Meat," Aeril heard himself answer. "Meat, bread, and wine." In a couple minutes he had before him all 3. A black-blooded sausage cut into seared steaks, a bread trencher filled with broth, and a cup of red wine. The first 2 Aeril devoured ravenously, a third just so, even if it tasted half already of vinegar and nothing like the spiced red which had last passed his lips. "What happened?" Aeril heard Amnia ask as he ate. "Word around the castle was a hunting accident. Did you see whose arrow it was?" Aeril swerved his head to the side. Try as he might, though, the exact memory eluded him. "There were a pair of trees," he said finally. "Ebon gloams. I heard a voice, but it might just have been the wind. I never saw who shot me." "Shame." Amnia turned back to her cooking. "Your brother was tearing himself up over it. He bears the blame himself." "Is that so?" Under the table in Aeril's tone lurked a clenched fist. "What about the prince?" "Oh, him?" Amnia chuckled. "Much the same. It seems there's yet some of the boy still in him." "Then he has fooled you." Despite the coal alight in his stomach, Aeril kept his face still. Ignorance cannot excuse the crime. "When did he leave?" "Last morning," Amnia answered. "Him, your brother, Egenhand, Rubeferic, Cecil, and Julianus all to Fair Calais. They left yesterday." Aeril's head was a bell. "What?" Amnia turned to his left eye. "You didn't know?" "Didn't know. Aeril gulped. No. I didn't realize. Have I truly slept so long?" "Past 2 days, I'd count." Amnia turned away. "Me, I'd say Brother Preston used too heavy a hand for your fit." "My fit?" "You don't remember?" Her look of concern enraged him. "When they brought you back to the castle, you had the falling sickness." At the words, something in Aeril's mind shattered, an illusion which could no longer deceive him. Egenhand was gone and he was a day late. If he left the next morning, he would only have 10 and 7. He could have done it once, but in his condition... Aeril's left eye found his plate, head aflame. Egenhand. He burned. What use had the man for a cripple, a feebleton, an infirm? Small wonder he left. Aeril cursed his fate. Him and that prince. It wasn't his fault another possession had come. How would he have known? How could he? Those days were behind him. It wasn't fair. They were, right? And how could he rule the mandate when he could not even rule himself? He had to go back. He had to get it back. Aeril wobbled to his feet. "There's something I need to do," he heard himself whisper. "Where are you going?" He was already halfway to the stairwell when Amnia spoke. "Out!" he breathed. "Somewhere that isn't here." She was silent for a while. Aeril paused, turning until his left eye could again see the old woman. "You're not going to stop me?" The old cook shook her head. "Why would I?" Aeril grimaced, inhaled sharply, and turned back. "Not a word," he ordered. Before she could reply, he was gone. Back in the great hall he was alone, silent as a shadow beneath the earth. Aeril snuck towards the door to the cloister overlooking the yard, when 2 figures entered. Aeril hid behind the doorway. It was Meg and Kanta. "What about Aeril?" Meg's chipper voice bounced off the stone sunset walls. Aeril paused. "Me?" Resisting the flame in his stomach, he pressed himself harder against the wall behind the doorway and listened. What about him? Although static as dead stone, Kanta's voice hummed against Aeril's ear. "I mean, if he wakes. When he wakes." From the stone shot a spike. "Least your faith be lacking." "When he wakes," Meg corrected herself. What then? We send him south, Cantor replied. Let him say bandits had him. There are enough of those already. The rooks will have to believe him. And if he doesn't? A long pause. After his fall, I doubt my brother will have much interest in ruling. Aeril's breath caught in his throat. Canta, Meg, trying to replace him? The truth of it stung, but as Aeril thought more, he realized they were right. After all that had happened, he had no interest in ruling the Mandate. Right now, only one thing mattered, and after that, Aeril's nails dug against where his other eye should have been. Justice. He listened on. How do you know that? There was a long pause. Oh, I see. And Fortuna? They're like a brother to me, Cantor replied. Or a sister. I have complete faith in their abilities. Besides, we have the same goal, to protect Erdonia and her people, and every knee bends forward. Aeril remembered Fortuna's expression, how they had rose in stammering protest 2 nights afore, which now seemed 20. Had it just been for Lucian's leaving, or what it now meant? Carefully, he flitted to the doorway's other side and peeked his left eye around. What will you do then? They are standing by the high table now. About the coming months. Whatever we can. Canta tapped a finger against the wood. The hour is late, but more hands besmirch few, and fewer more greedily none. The mines have enough workers as is, and should we lower their number by half, the yield will not suffer as greatly. We will put them to work in the fields, in the forests and mountain hills. The people of Erdonia are one, and I will not have them starve or succumb to vice so long as I draw breath. And your liege? Meg twined a lock of her hair. What will the Empress say? Let that too be the bandits' due. Canta rose and turned towards the throne. Meg, what do you know of laws? Laws, my lady? Meg's hand stopped. What do you mean? I mean, Canta's gaze narrowed. Should the time come, what harvests we might claim as ours. Stone endures, but law, inheritance, those are water, fickle, flowing, destructive. Aeril's sister raised a smooth hand, looking it over before her brow furrowed in disgust. That is if they answer to me, Canta grimaced. A maid of 10 and 6, unmarried, untested, Her hand fell to her side. Sing for me, Meg. Sing for you? Meg blinked her dark, dark eyes. But Canta, you know... I said sing, Canta ordered. Look. When Meg stayed still, Canta turned and pulled the lyre from its plaque. I'm no good with this either. Taking a seat, Canta didactically plucked a few discordant notes. The least you could do is suffer with me. Meg clutched her left arm, her face hidden from Aeril's view. Oh, there once was a prince, Meg began falteringly, with hair soft as spring rain. Canta laughed and began strumming along, a disharmony to match her friends. Who slept deep and spent 8 years finding his home again. He found the old man and his kin beneath the earth, who had eyes like starlight, the treasure of his birth. Enough, enough. Canta rose and held her companion by the shoulders. That's enough. She then embraced her other half, the one who even now looked as her reflected. Thank you. The whisper carried on the open air. Canta returned the lyre to its spot only to then stare at it like a surge in their ward. I need more people, she announced suddenly. People of wisdom, learning, action. You and I and Fortuna cannot do this alone. If we are truly to protect my people, we need more. And then there are those bandits. Which ones? Meg asked as she and Canta turned towards the throne once more. Exactly, Canta stated flatly. My brother's parting gift. Name-takers, one of them is called. Beardless boys hardly older than me, I'd wager. Their name sounds like a blunt jape with too great an edge. The other, road tollers. They're more brazen brutes and broken men beside. But word is both bands had joined as one. Bell tollers, they now call themselves. Bell tollers? Meg made a face. Just a name. Aeril jumped back as Canta faced the doorway which hid him from view. I doubt they actually revere the wearer of the bloody eye, but if they do worship Vitria... Canta grew silent as the two turned towards the main stairwell. They will be dealt with, one way or another. Come, walk with me. Once their footsteps had echoed into nothingness, Aeril moved from where he was hiding. Although they had said much, he had more to consider. Sunset was upon him and he had work to do. This late in the day, the training yard was empty. A few carefully placed limbs and Aeril had climbed onto the castle's ramparts, his left eye as guide. Below was a shallow drop, 10 cubits at most, to where the hill rose to meet the castle wall. Bracing himself against the ancient stones, Aeril vaulted over the wall and began his descent. It was a short walk to Erin's wood, a shorter one to the path they had taken. Between his thin tunic, the canopy of pines and oaks, Aeril felt the chill breeze brush him by. On it, a whisper of doom. A daughter she will be, a bearer of your curse. Quiet! Aeril's voice rang hoarsely through the wood. You're mistaken. I have no daughter. And yet the whispers persisted. Soon Aeril found where their paths had diverged. Tracing his steps with his left eye, he darted through the trees, caring not what might block his path so long as he found it. 2 ebon gloams. Aeril could picture them so easily, their purplish bark and fruit just beginning to turn from green to gold. His path turned once, then again, then again. Then he was lost, alone in a forest growing dark, the trees nowhere to be seen. A sudden fear gripped him, a fear that he would never find it. Never. A twig snapped nearby. Aeril froze, his mind alight with terrible manner of beast and all things that lurk in the dark. Bending down, he picked a stone from the forest floor. Heavy enough to throw, half its side was a craggy, jagged mess. Grey blade in hand, Aeril stalked towards the sound, waiting for the wind so he could approach unawares. Instead of a beast, some mountain lion or another, Aeril found a bearded ibex separated from its herd. Seeing it, Aeril thought of Edmund, his smug face and stubbly chin. As it grazed, Aeril readied his stone in the void beyond his left eye, and threw. Crack! Bleeding, the ibex turned and ran, leaving behind a single splintered horn. Aeril followed it with his left eye until that too failed him and he fell to his knees, his quarry unfound, as pain blossomed once more over his face. All, he whispered. Never. His fist slammed against the pebbly earth, cursing all his life and his works. Edmund! He could see him now, laughing. Spirit aflame, Aeril lunged forward and grabbed the broken horn. Gripping it tight, he raised it high in a force growing the color of blood, imagining it and his hands red with the prince's life. Justice, he growled through the pain. With or without you, I will have my justice. But that would have to wait, for now his wound had reopened. The sun setting into a long summer twilight, Aeril emerged from the wood, clutching the broken spear of horn. Where the paths diverged, a single rider waited for him atop a stallion dark as winter midnight. Lord Merula. The Councillor Egenhan greeted him from atop his horse. I was rightly guided to seek you in this place. Here I am. Aeril spat, pain throbbing behind his eye. What are you doing here? To leave for fair Calais and be here all the same? Now that's a trick I'd like to know. The master of the imperial household smirked. It is a shame what happened to your eye. Pray tell, do you recall who might have done it? Aeril gripped the horn until his fingers went red. No, I wouldn't happen to know anything about that. The Emperor's nail paused. That is most curious. So is this. Aeril looked up at the rider. You came to Castle Ravencroft wanting to bring me into your service. Tell me, how did you know I would be there if you and the prince left Fair Calais almost half a month before I did? Oh, come, Egenhan chuckled. You know the answer well as I. Aeril's gaze met Egenhan's, bottomless and pale as the deep places of the earth. How long have you been keeping an eye on me, then? That would be telling, he replied, though the answer is long enough. Had you kept your robe, undergone that bothersome initiation of theirs, I still might have, and that here I stand. What? A smile grew to Egenhan's lips. You do seem remarkably healthy, for one who has just lost an eye. A breeze blew between them and Aeril spoke. You still want me. He said it so plainly. Despite all that has happened, you still want me. Master of the imperial household. That's not your real title, is it? All names, the Emperor's nail replied, are imperfect retellings of an ideal form. shadows cast upon the wall which we claim we recognize. Tell me, Aeril of the Murulai, you spent 5 years in fair Calais. What shadows did you see? My 2 eyes. Aeril flexed his dry, marred fingers. They saw corruption. Hundreds and thousands of souls pressed against stone, robbed of their futures, their ambitions, their goals, each taken to satiate the appetites of another. A shadow cast long from the gleaming heights of Origin's Hall. The Rooks preach an ideal world, a perfect society built from perfect knowledge. But what is a society without justice, and how can there be justice when the righteous still suffer at the hands of the wicked, doomed to persist in their failure to become? The counselor chuckled. Wise words from a wise mind. Truly, it seems you and Lucian were cut from the same cloth. I agree, Aeril. A rot lurks within our empire. One that, like a wound gone bad, threatens our entire way of life, should it not be removed. My organization. We do as the nail of the Emperor is wont to do. Scratch. Reveal the corruption so the surgeon may put it right. In that way, we are the true agents of justice, righting wrongs to promote an even greater good. And what good is that? In the sunset light, Egenhand's eyes shone, the peace of the gods, the safety of the Empire and her people, maintained by us and us alone. The couriers, the lectorials, even the temple ordinators, they are apprentices playing at a game which takes lifetimes to master. Toothless, the lot of them. The Holy Blades have their part too, but we keep the Empire secure. We alone know what it is to do the will of the gods and preserve their order. The master of the imperial household extended his gloved hand, a cold wind rising. No other path remains. What endures for you here? An unexamined life? A duty better served by your sister, one that only exists so long as your father remains absent. Join me, and you will have wings. You will have the world. Stay, and you will persist. You will rot in this one of your own making. Rot or soar, that is your choice. And what would those wings cost me? Aeril asked. Egenhand retracted his arm. Little for you. Those initiated into my order. Egenhand's eyes again glinted in the dying sun, divulged themselves of their pasts. Their family name, their inheritances melt like water into the sea, their possessions offerings upon the altar of their oath. You will serve the Empire, whomever may wear its mournful crown. And you, little blackbird, I will be your lord until I deem their return necessary. Aeril paused, straining his voice over the rising wind. You call little what others would much. Less than the Rooks for the robe and medal, Egenhand countered. No more than you already have. There is nothing here for you but bones. With me you will find life, honor, truth. Fortuna appeared before Aeril, Amnia and Preston and Kanta and all the rest. Their eyes were pleading as they had been 2 nights prior, pleading for a world which could not come. Make your choice. Aeril opened his mouth and chose.